My literacy history started when I was 6. It was towards the end of kindergarten when I was given a book as a gift for my mastery of the alphabet. The book had a couple words on each page. I could read it, and did, several times to prove my maturity to my friends and family. Trust me when I say I was an annoying youngest child. I must have read that book to everyone who came into contact with me over the next couple of days. My mother took the book away from me and gave me a book that had a paragraph on each page, and told me people would be impressed if I could read that out loud. Obviously, I was not able to do this, nor had the attention span to attempt it, so my feeling of superiority left me. I remember enjoying my first book in 2nd grade. It was called something like Coyote Ugly. This is probably not the name of the book, but of that bar stripper movie, but the title was similar. It was about a son trying to find his father. The only thing left of his father was his dog. The son and dog did not like each other, but through several mishaps and trials together became best buds. The first writing memory I have was to two pen pals in 3rd grade. I definitely did writing before, but nothing significant to remember. My class practiced cursive by writing to Iraq soldiers. The one soldier I remember was named Scott. He was an M&M's man and was from Texas. We also talked on AIM once or twice before we both realized this relationship wasn't going anywhere. A 9-year-old has nothing to add to a conversation with a person in their late 20s unless they are related. Most of my childhood, though, involved anything but reading and writing. I didn't think it was cool. And more than once did kids in my elementary school say to me, "You think you're so cool, don't you?" I don't believe I ever achieved coolness, but did my best to lean in that general direction. I idolized my half-brother growing up. He was 9 years older than me and very good at video games. He was also very intelligent, but I thought that it was cool he was good at video games. So, video games were my spare time. And being the youngest of 3, my parents did not harp on me about reading as much as they did my other siblings. I grew up playing the SNES, Game Boys, Virtual Boys, and computer games as well. I also watched my brother play video games whenever I could, or when he had friends over, I would watch them play against each other. My favorite video games growing up were Halo for the Xbox and Soul Calibur for the Dreamcast. Video games are still my favorite pastime and would choose them over a book any day. I will forever be that awkward fat kid playing video games in my basement. When I was in 4th grade, I made my class laugh for the first time. My class had to do a project that required us to categorize and record certain events during the month of September. At this point in my life, I was still a very shy, sensitive kid. I recorded for this project a pain calendar that explained how I got hurt each day and an emoticon sticker that corresponded to the pain severity. I did not do this to be funny, but it was a wonderful accident. I got my class to laugh hysterically for a couple minutes, and it was exhilarating. This is important to my literacy history because from this moment on, all I wanted to do was be funny. I started watching Comedy Central, Saturday Night Live, anything on TV that was funny beyond the original 3, Nickelodeon, Disney Channel, Cartoon Network. I didn't fully immerse myself into comedy yet and was still a very quiet and emotional child. But whenever a project or paper came to me, I made it as humorous as I possibly could. After 4th grade, I went to an intermediate school for 5th and 6th grade. In this school, I would be meeting kids from the other elementary school in my town. I decided then to come out of my shell and become a class clown. I would no longer be the shy, sensitive student, but the eccentric, humorous person I always wanted to be. My longest-running gag in 5th grade was the character Super Cow. You can find her on the back of every milk carton of Guide's Dairy, which is in most public schools. Most of my papers and input for class at the beginning of the year involved Super Cow. I gained a reputation quickly among my new classmates and teachers as a comedian. I never spoke out of turn, though. Throughout my academic career, my jokes related to the subject material. I always stayed on the good side of my teachers, besides a middle school gym teacher who I could only explain as jealous of my hilarious personality. My 5th grade teacher, Mrs. Huber, was one of my favorites. She was very nice to me and helped me a lot with my grammar. As a child who rarely read or wrote, it began to catch up with me academically in 5th grade. Every week we would have a free write where Mrs. Huber would give us a broad topic to write about. One week I wrote a song about our school spirit and performed it for the class. I killed it. I'm kidding, but Mrs. Huber was still impressed by my performance. She made me perform it in the hallway during class again to another teacher I did not know. I would soon find out that this man was my future 6th grade teacher, Mr. Doritas. When 6th grade finally came, I knew this would be a great school year. Poetry and art was hung on every corner of the wall, and we immediately started writing in journals about ourselves. That year our writing prompts were very open-ended and allowed us to express our creativity. I remember writing stories about Santa Claus throwing a party and a superhero trying to break up with his girlfriend. The best part about that year was the poetry slams. Mr. Doritas and Mr. Conway, another teacher, would team up once every other week, and we would go find an empty enrichment classroom and perform poetry for each other. This was when I began to realize entertaining people is when I am most happy. I had a rap about a unicorn being my best friend and a poem about a monster trying to find a date. I'd pay a high price to see those poems again. Mr. Doritas is to this day my favorite teacher, and I always look back on that year fondly. Sixth grade was also when I got my first computer. It was an E-machine and I didn't have internet, but I did have video games and Digital Blue. It was a child video production program. I started making videos with my friends during sleepovers. I would also pay a significant amount of money to see those videos again. I don't even remember a premise, but they were silly and some of the funnest times I had with my friend. My middle school years were another 2 years of being a comedian. I got a new computer and a better camera. I made more videos with my friends. Some you can still find on YouTube. My favorite being pre-Halloween. We would go around trick-or-treating the week before Halloween to beat the rush. In 8th grade, my English teacher was Dr. Fuller, who was an eccentric fellow himself, and that was reflected in his teachings. A lot of that year involved creative writing, which I interpreted as writing comedy. Some of my papers resembled more sketch comedy than proper papers. My grammar was still awful, but would get A's and B's because Dr. Fuller thought I was being creative and funny. I got class clown that year, which was huge for me. If there's one thing people who try to be funny enjoy, it's validation. High school was hard my freshman year. I spent the past 9 years of schooling going by on the bare minimum, which I could no longer do if I wanted to get into a good college. After getting a 2.7 GPA my first semester, my parents told me if I wanted to be successful in my life, I would have to get better grades. Not in those words exactly, but somehow they inspired me to do more. I was and still am a huge procrastinator, but for the most part I will always get my assignments done. I learned a lot in high school. The most important being different viewpoints in the world. My freshman English teacher was Mrs. Willette. She taught me about different religions and ideals resulting in those ideologies. I read Siddhartha that year, which really interested me because that was the first time I learned of time being a man-made invention. Our life has no beginning or end, and just is. My junior year, my English teacher was Mr. Dorr, who was probably my favorite teacher in high school. We read books like Walden and the Stranger that introduced me to many new philosophies and thought processes: existentialism, absurdism, pragmatism, realism, naturalism, and nihilism. My senior year, I had Mrs. Willette again, and that is when I read Crime and Punishment, which is one of my favorite books, simply because the main character, Raskolnikov, and his rationality of killing 2 people. All of these books are important to me as a comedian. Different ideals and opinions, especially strong ones, are the basis of comedy. I believe the more someone understands the world and humans, the more they know of what can be funny. That is why comedian cliches are, "You ever notice?" or "What's the deal with?" Comedians, improvisers, writers, and actors alike are pointing out the absurdity and irony of the world around us. Today, I still try to be that class clown I was in 5th grade, doing stand-up and improv, trying to make everybody laugh. The sketch comedy I wrote in 8th grade has evolved to writing for public broadcast and a new YouTube channel my fellow video production friends and I have in the world. My favorite moments are when I'm with my friends talking about a funny thing that happened or could have happened. My fellow comic roommate and I point out the absurdities of college and the people who inhabit it. Walk down Court Street on Wednesday night, say 11 o'clock. The conversations had between drunken bros and clearly freezing women is beyond comprehension. The next 3 years will be absorbing all I can by the characters around me, so I can better understand humans and the world, and be funnier because of it. This is where my literacy history has brought me, trying to find explanations to unexplainable actions and thoughts. When I read nowadays, I look mostly for character development and viewpoint. The more emotions, viewpoints, and characteristics a comedian can call upon, the more well off the comedian will be.